I'm Sean Holsizer, Senior Vice President of Impact. At CAEL, we have one goal: linking learning and work for all adults. We believe that every adult should have access to gain the skills, knowledge, and credentials they need to thrive in our economy. Employers and communities depend on adults. They are the workforce that sustains the entire economy. Hard workers who want good careers and secure jobs and bright futures. And yet, tens of millions lack the skills they need in order to secure those good jobs. That's why we know we can't do it alone. We specialize in bringing organizations together as they support adult learners, providing them with tools and solutions so that they can be more effective in their work, helping adult learners navigate the pathways and the on and off ramps between education and employment. Our work with these organizations helps enable lifelong learning and working models. Adult learners need those because the connection between learning and work isn't always clear. Adult learners have very specific needs in terms of what makes them successful, and CAEL helps organizations meet those needs. So I invite you to join us in this important work as we strive to make a difference in the lives of adult learners.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting us to join you today. My name is Becky Klein-Collins, and I'm from CAEL. I'm joined by my colleague, Patrick Lane from WICHE, or the Western Interstate Commission for Higher Education. This session is about the importance of recognizing the learning that adult students bring with them to post-secondary education from their work and life experiences. We're going to share with you brand new research findings from our two organizations showing the impressive benefits that come from recognizing this learning. The definition of adult in adult student or adult learner can be rather expansive. It can be defined by age. For example, in our research study, we defined adult students as age 25 or older. But it can also refer to any college student whose primary identity is not student. They can be parents, workers, veterans, or service members, or people who are juggling school with other responsibilities like work and family. Often, these are people who may have gone to college right after high school, but who dropped out for whatever reason. But after years of work, they're recognizing that they're going to need more skills, knowledge, and credentials to access better paying jobs or careers with long-term employability. And post-secondary education has probably never been more important than it is in our current economic crisis. Now, we don't know what the road ahead looks like in terms of our economic recovery, but we suspect that if the past is prologue and if things play out like they did after the Great Recession, the new jobs that will emerge in this recovery are likely to require higher levels of skills and credentials than the jobs that were lost. So it's going to be important for colleges to consider how to support students of all ages, not just the students coming straight from high school, but also the adults who are going to need post-secondary learning and credentials in order to forge new career paths following this crisis. So colleges are going to need to consider how best to support these students and do things differently, like providing flexible learning models, staggered start dates, online support services, and so on. And when it comes to accelerating degree completion, colleges should find ways for people to build on what they already know and allow students to count that learning towards a degree or other credential. And that's where prior learning assessment, or PLA, comes in.
So let's talk about what PLA is. As you mentioned, adult learners are often people who are coming to post-secondary learning with a lot of life experience. They've been in the workforce, they've been raising families, they've been in the military. Some of the learning has been formal, like through professional licensing or certification programs, but a lot has been informal learning on the job or learning while doing work in the community. That learning has a lot of value. It's sophisticated, it's relevant to workforce needs, it's transferable to other situations, and comparable to the kind of learning that takes place in a college classroom. Some colleges offer a variety of methods to evaluate and recognize that learning so it counts towards a degree or a credential. Some of the methods you may be familiar with. The most common ones are usually standardized exams like the CLEP test and awarding credit for military training through ACE military credit recommendations. But there are also other methods like challenge exams developed in-house by faculty, portfolio assessments, and then also the review of formal training opportunities that are offered in corporate settings or for formal apprenticeships or licenses. Collectively, these methods are referred to as prior learning assessments, PLA, or credit for prior learning.
You know, Pat, there are likely people in the audience today who are not very familiar with PLA. And so I want to make sure that it's very clear that PLA is not about awarding credit for someone's experience. Colleges that are doing PLA the right way don't say things like, well, let me just look at your resume and I see you have 5 years of experience in project management for this major company, so I think that's worth 9 credits in business administration. That's not what PLA is. Rather, college credit for PLA is only awarded if the learning has been evaluated, not the experience. Now, there are a lot of reasons why institutions offer PLA. For me, one of the most important reasons is that it's the right thing to do. Learning is learning, regardless of where or how that learning is acquired. And why should we expect a student to sit through a course if they already have all of the learning that's in that course? But there are other reasons for offering PLA. Many institutions like to offer PLA as a way to help students save both time and money in earning their degrees. In fact, colleges will showcase this kind of cost and time savings when using PLA as a recruitment tool for adult students. But we've also heard from PLA administrators that PLA can have a motivational effect on students, which can help keep them focused on their studies, and then they persist and finish their credentials. About 10 years ago, CAEL conducted a study that found just that PLA students were more likely to complete their degree compared to students without PLA credit. And now 10 years later, CAEL and WICHE teamed up to revisit this question with support from Lumina Foundation and the Strata Education Network. So Pat, could you share a little bit about this study and what we found?
Sure. First, some quick background on the study itself. We had 72 institutions submit data on over 230,000 adult students, defined, as you said, as students who were 25 or older when they matriculated in the academic year of 2011-2012. The participating institutions were a broad mix of 2- and 4-year colleges and included public, private nonprofits, and for-profit institutions. The institutions provided de-identified information on students who received credit through PLA and information on those who did not. This allowed us to try to isolate the impact of PLA. From our data, there were clear benefits in terms of cost savings and time savings for the adult students. Based on the number of PLA credits they earned and the fees that their institutions charged for the methods that were used, we estimated that the tuition saved by these students was significant, ranging from about $1,500 at community colleges to over $10,000 at 4-year private nonprofits. In addition, for those who completed degrees, we estimated that PLA saved approximately 9 to 14 months from the overall time required to complete a degree. But the big finding is on completion. Using a statistical modeling procedure called propensity score matching provides us some degree of control for student characteristics and institutional environments. What we found was that receiving PLA increased the likelihood of credential completion by 17% across all methodologies and 30% for those students receiving credit through methodologies other than military recommendations from the American Council on Education. In addition, the data for students of every race, ethnicity, every age group, all genders, all income levels, and so on, all had strong positive effects from PLA on credential completion. So this is great news in terms of credential or degree completion. On the other hand, usage rates for PLA was an area where much more work remains to be done. In our data, only 11% of the adult students received credit through PLA. The usage rates varied somewhat for different student groups. The highest rate of credit earning was by veterans or current service members. The lowest rate was for community college students as well as Black and low-income students, which raises real concerns on the equity front. So even though we have a real strong PLA effect on credential completion for these groups, we essentially have an access problem or an opportunity gap when it comes to PLA for certain populations. And just generally speaking, we have a lot to do to increase access to PLA for adults. Becky, CAEL's been working with colleges for more than 40 years on PLA, so you guys know all about efforts to get adult learners to use PLA. Can you share a little bit more about some of the strategies that colleges are using to expand access to PLA?
Yeah, so a few things are really key in terms of first steps with a PLA program. So, at a minimum, having a range of different kinds of PLA methods available is important, as is having transparent policies about how PLA can be used at your institution and within your degree programs. But PLA has never been something where if you build it, they will come. There are a few other things that colleges need to do to make sure that students are aware of PLA and that they will use it. First thing is communication. Pat, you'll recall that in one of the other WICHE PLA research projects that are part of your big PLA initiative, one college administrator likened PLA to a secret club, which is obviously no way to implement an important institutional program. Ensuring that students, particularly adult students, are intentionally informed about PLA and at as many touch points as possible is really key to increasing usage. Another important strategy seems to be systemic and proactive advising to guide and support students who might be interested in PLA. For example, PLA should be one of the first things addressed by advisors when they meet with students. Does the student have a lot of work and life experience? What have they learned through those experiences? And is that learning comparable to the learning they need for their degrees? Finally, it's really important that PLA be something that the whole institution understands and supports. It's not just admissions, advising, and the registrar. Those are kind of the obvious ones, but also leadership and faculty. This helps in making sure that students will hear about PLA, but also getting everyone good information on PLA is important for dispelling some common myths. For example, one common myth has to do with perceptions about quality. Faculty are often concerned about PLA from an academic quality perspective, but we have found that once they learn that PLA is awarded for assessed learning and not just for experience listed on a student's resume, faculty can become some of the biggest champions for PLA on campuses. Another myth that may be of concern to leadership is that the college will lose tuition dollars by offering lower cost credit awards through PLA. Well, we found in our research that this is actually not the case. What we found is that if we looked at the course taking patterns of PLA students versus non-PLA students, we found that the PLA students actually took more courses from their institution, 17 more credits on average than the non-PLA students. And we think this is because the PLA students were the ones who were more likely to persist and complete their degrees than the non-PLA students. So getting everyone trained on these kinds of facts related to PLA is really important for everyone to be on the same page.
Great, thanks, Becky. Those are terrific ideas for embedding PLA into an institution's overall approach for supporting adult learners. And I think now we're at the end of our time, so we're sharing the links to the CAEL and WICHE landing pages where you can find the research report we discussed today. And on the WICHE site, you'll also find 10 other research reports released in 2020 as part of a larger PLA initiative funded by Lumen and Strata. And just to summarize the highlights and takeaways of what we covered today, adult learners bring a lot of knowledge, skills, and other learning to post-secondary pursuits, and it makes great business sense for colleges to recognize that learning and have it count towards their degrees. With PLA strategies, colleges can attract students with the promise of saving time and money with the additional benefits of better degree completion rates that then translate to increased tuition dollars for the institution. This makes PLA an important strategy for colleges wanting to support the many adults that will be wanting to pursue post-secondary credentials in the months and years ahead. So thank you so much for your time today, and we wish you all the best for you and your work in the higher education in the coming year.